Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give everybody just a couple of seconds to settle down, to settle in. Make sure you have sound. Nick has his presentation going. You should be seeing Joyce, Miley, and Nick at the top, whether you are in gallery mode or in speaker mode. Welcome, everybody. We are so happy to see our Osprey stewards and get a chance to gather and hear all the amazing data that you collected. I'm Joyce Lights. For those who are not familiar with me, I'm currently the interim executive director of Connecticut Audubon Society. And I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you because what you do really has a big impact. It provides so much data that's important for us across the state. And without you, this would not be possible. Miley, I'm going to pass this off to Miley, and Miley will give you a little bit more story about our program.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, Joyce. I'd like to thank Tom Anderson as well, because he put a lot of this effort into this year's program. And thank you, as Joyce said, to everyone who contributed to our Osprey Nation program this year. Without you guys helping us, this program would not exist. This is probably the largest citizen science program. It's certainly the largest citizen science program that Connecticut Audubon Society runs. It's probably one of the most successful and largest citizen science programs in the state, focusing on a focal species like ospreys. We've been gathering an amazing amount of data over the last 10 years. At some point, I'm hoping we'll find somebody who can maybe mine that data and come up with some really good papers that could be written on ospreys and the productivity. This year was a fantastic year, thanks to you all. We had a record number of monitors. We had record numbers of data. And again, we could never, ever even have come close to this without our Osprey Nation coordinator, Nick Ferriolo. So I'd like to say, Nick, you did a great job, and I heard a lot from everybody about what a great job you did. Contacting people, following up on data collection, answering questions. I mean, a really, really great job. So hats off to Nick, who did a great job. So with that, Nick, I'd like to turn that over to you, since you're the maestro here. Not only the expert at collecting all this information, but an amazing PowerPoint magician.
Thank you, Miley, and thank you to Joyce and yourself and Tom, who helped me get through the year, to Bree, last year's coordinator, who in the beginning of the year fielded my questions and throughout the summer has helped me sort of keep at it. And of course, thank you to all of you guys, as Miley and Joyce have said. You made my job very easy. You guys were the ones going out on the ground and getting that information. As Miley said, really, certainly the most impressive citizen science project I've been a part of. And I've heard of nothing like it. So it's really great to come together now and to be able to see all of it together at the end of the season. So if we are ready to go and everyone can see my screen, then I will start. With this picture, Lisa's picture, I think it's great. Very impressive. One of my favorite pictures that I've seen this season. So we've got it first. Just a quick overview of sort of what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through this year's numbers, the key ones that we collect. Those are the ones everybody wants to see. We have a ton of pictures from you guys, which we're going to go through. And then we want to sort of pick some brains about the wildfires we had this year in late June and early July. We had put something out, Tom wrote it up, about sort of the impact of wildfires on wildlife and potentially on osprey. And you guys were out there and on the ground, so we really want to hear what you have to say about that, if you noticed anything. Got a cool figure to show you guys, just showing 10 years of progress in this project. Like Miley said, started with just over 100 volunteers, and this year we're at over 4 times that with a record number. So that we're really excited about that. And then we can go through any questions or comments or things that folks want to share about the season. So the 4 big statistics that we're interested in are stewards, the number of monitored nests, so nests that folks have signed up to monitor, the active nest where either incubation or chicks were seen, the birds attempted to breed, that's what we're going to call an active nest, and then the fledgling count. And I know that that is a bald eagle, but PowerPoint does not have any osprey infographic things, so we're going to go with the eagle. Forgive me for that. So the first statistic is stewards. Like I said, in 2014, we had just over 100, and now it's at 411, which of course is a project record. So a big hats off to you guys for all the new folks that we had this year. About 64% of the stewards were returning from previous years, 2022, and they've participated in the project before, but we did have a large number of new stewards. So hopefully some of them are here tonight. Thank you to both new and returning stewards. Monitored nests, 941, which is also another project record, finding nests and watching nests in corners of the state that we have not seen them before, which was really exciting to see. Active nests, we have 688, which is another project record. You guys were killing it. The more nests we're going to find, the more active nests we're going to find. So that was exciting. And then the big number, the one that everyone cares about, is the fledgling count, which was a big jump from last year. We were at 835 and now we're at 880. So that's something that we're really excited about this year. And a statistic that I don't think gets reported on normally, but I was really impressed by this year, which is another testament to all of your hard work, is the number of reports that we got using the online reporting form. A lot of folks submit forms and reports not through that, which is totally fine, and they have their own system that works well. We're able to get those reports in. So just on the reporting forms, we had over 5,500. So you can imagine how many more reports we have from folks just sending them in. So that's really impressive. All of those numbers are something we're really excited about. This is just 10 years of information that we have here in this table. The last column all the way on the right is this year, which of course is all those numbers. And then another number, which is fledglings per nest, which is how we're calculating productivity. You can see over the last 10 years, and including the year with COVID and the reduced participation because of that, the productivity has jumped around a bit. Since 2021, we've seen a very slight decline in that amount, but this year we did have of one of the lowest one that's been reported. And there's a couple of ideas we've been thinking about and toying around with to see why that might be happening. One of which is in response to a lot of call to actions this year by Osprey Nation. We got a lot of stewards in July who are able to go out and confirm a bunch of active nests, which was great because it helped us find new nests, and that information was really helpful. But in some cases, folks were not, for a number of different reasons, able to make it back out there. So we have a lot of reports of either birds incubating or birds with chicks that unfortunately couldn't be confirmed as fledged. So I think that is something that could have potentially contributed to it, which of course next year we'll know that because it'll change.
Yeah, so the productivity may actually be a little bit higher because of that.
Absolutely. There were a couple of nests that folks had got information on, or 2 or 3 chicks that were getting pretty big. So the chances are that they did fledge.
In the beginning, we were a little worried about the number of monitors, right? We had there were a lot of nests that were unmonitored, and then we put out the publicity on it, and a whole bunch of people came in. Like you said, right at the end of June, early July, we got an influx of of new monitors, which was a big help, which shows that maybe next year we ought to rethink about how we advertise for our monitors. Obviously, everybody loves ospreys. They're great birds. They're easy to see, and when people found out that we were doing this project, they all jumped on board. So maybe we should start a little earlier, trying to get more monitors. So we'll put that on the to-do list for next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think if folks can, if we're able to put out enough stuff and people can sign on in April and March, which is when next year's signups, that information will come out, and just get that full season of monitoring. That's
Yeah.
going to help us with that number. But yeah, like I said, it was great to see so many people respond to that and know that there is such a large group of people in Connecticut who really do care
And also,
about
keep in mind that this is not an exact science. I mean, these are estimates. They're close estimates, but they're not exact estimates. We don't know, I don't think, every active nest in the state. We don't know, obviously, all the fledglings. So, but we're becoming pretty damn close. I mean, we've got a lot of people looking at osprey nests, but there's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of nests out there that we're unaware of. It'd be interesting if we could put some kind of a percentage on that. I don't know how, but how,
and that's something. Yeah,
I don't know how we would do that, but it would be it'd be a task to figure out what percentage of nests do we think we're missing.
For sure. I think, well, this year we had 108 new nests, which was cool. And some of those nests were in towns that in 2022 did not have osprey in them. So I think with the increased effort, we're digging into different parts of the state. People who drove by a nest for years said, hey, that's an osprey in there. I'll report that and get that information in. So I think the more nests that we find and the more coverage we have, that productivity number is probably going to stabilize around where it's supposed to be, or what the true number is for this population. But like you said, Miley, it's hard to know how many are out there that we're not seeing.
The other thing, and I wonder about this as well, everybody along the coast, that we live with ospreys, we see them every day. We know what they are. We know where they nest. But people inland, where these birds are beginning to move, are not that familiar with ospreys. So they may see an osprey nest, not know what the hell it is, and so the more we can educate people, the better off we'll be. So I'm wondering if there's a lot of nests that are unreported because people don't know they're osprey nests further inland, Barkhamsted Reservoir, up along the northern tier. That'd be interesting to find out.
For sure. Okay, so yeah, those are the four numbers that we talked about in the first slide, and then of course the 1.28 that I think will take more years and more observations, and as the effort increases, we'll have a better understanding of what that number is for sure. So I guess as I'm going to, if folks want to drop comments in the chat, that way when we get to the end and the questions, you don't have to have remembered it for the whole time. You can we'll read them all once we get to the end. I don't want anyone to remember something and then forget it, because that's frustrating. Okay, so another a change to the 2023 season that we implemented this year was splitting abandoned nests. And in 2022, a nest that did not have an osprey, a platform nest that did not have an osprey at it at all, like you see on the bottom, was classified as abandoned. And even though it never had a bird in that season, the nest, like you see on the top, that has a bird was also classified as abandoned. So you had a bird and then you didn't. This year we called that abandoned. This year, if you didn't see any birds, but it was a platform nest throughout the whole season, then we just called that a vacant platform. We really want to try and narrow down where there are actually birds. And an osprey platform, there are a couple instances this year where we have non-osprey nesting on them, but for the most part, during the breeding season, osprey are really the ones running those platforms. So we want to still keep them on the map. We want to still have an understanding of where they are, but we want to work towards getting a true count as to how many birds and how many pairs we might have coming to these spots. So you may not have had a vacant platform nest this year or a platform nest at all, but it's something to look for if that gets continued in the 2024 season. This year on the map, they were blue and abandoned was orange. So we have that. Something else new this year that we're sort of interested in looking at was how often are osprey bringing fish or bringing prey to their nests. There's a lot of research that shows understanding prey delivery rates can tell you a load about populations, about the health of the food base, about the individual bird's ability to get that food. So it's something that I think could help contextualize that decline in productivity that we were seeing. So to find nests that were suitable for this, we wanted folks who had visited a nest for at least 45 minutes. And we wanted at least 10 of those observations so we could really ensure a good chunk of time was spent watching that nest. So we found 5 of those meeting those criteria. And stewards watched for more than 74 hours at those 5 nests, which was impressive. We calculated the delivery rate to be 0.32 fish per hour. So that's how, it's about 3-ish, a fish gets brought once every 3 point something hours, which was interesting. And the research in other populations, there's a couple of papers on the West Coast and some down in the Chesapeake Bay that are showing that that delivery rate is consistent with what other populations are seeing. That type of information hasn't been recorded for Connecticut yet. So I think it's something that might be worth continuing to see how that changes in relation to the productivity. All right, so now we're going to go through some of the pictures that you guys sent in. I really enjoyed looking at all these this year. It made me feel like I was there watching it, especially if you sent a bunch of the incubating and then the chicks and then the fledgling. It was really great to look at. I did go through all of the ones that were sent in specifically in response to the October update. I pulled some from earlier in the season that folks had sent, and I did dig some up on Facebook. Everyone whose name was on there is credited with the picture. We're not going to do anything else with it. It's just going to be in this presentation, but I thought everyone should get a chance to see it. So we have this nest, cell tower nest that Elizabeth took. I think I can speak for all cell tower observers this year that those nests are really challenging when you're 200 feet down and you're trying to see where it is. So for those of you who stuck with that, thank you. I'm sure it was challenging, especially with a big deep nest. Here we have Jess's picture, Brantford 83. The fledgling is great. It's screaming. I like that picture a lot. Here's Paula's picture, huge cell tower nest. There's a lot of huge nests in these pictures, which I always find impressive. Rick's pictures from West Haven 1 are awesome. A light tower, which I imagine is about just as challenging as the cell tower. I think the platform people and the cell tower people are in totally different camps and should switch sometime to have the cell tower people get to experience a platform and vice versa. Another unconventional nest, Norwalk 33.
I wonder where that 33 was in Norwalk. Was that on the
I'm not exactly sure if Martha's here. She can throw that in the comments because I'd like to know. Yeah, it's some
on the power
industrial.
plant, maybe on the abandoned power plant. Huh.
Susan's picture from Greenwich. The top left, I think, is really
on
cool.
the asphalt plant.
It is on the asphalt plant. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Joyce.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of nests this year, not a ton of natural nests, which I didn't look super closely at how that compared to 2022, but I thought it was interesting on how many successful nests we had on human-made objects, whether it be cell towers or light towers. I think it speaks to Connecticut Osprey and their perseverance. I mean, Connecticut is a densely populated state. There's people everywhere. There's infrastructure everywhere. So the fact that I think we have the population that we do considering all that is exciting. Some more of Susan's pictures, which I like the chick in the bottom.
Did we have any ground nesting birds this year?
We did, and there's one of my favorite ones is in this PowerPoint.
Okay.
I'm excited for. Laura's pictures from Groton 1, the chicks. Fledgling pictures, I think, are the best.
Yeah.
They're another big nest, though. I mean, it's seasons and seasons of work that goes into it. And then a lot of nests late in the season this year, folks reported were destroyed, either blown down or after the birds leave, the cell tower companies will go up and remove them so that they can do maintenance before the winter time comes. So the fact that they're able to build up such big nests in those first couple weeks or months of being back, I think is another reason why we love Osprey.
I told you about the one on the Fairfield Police Department communication
Yes, I don't
tower.
know. I don't know if everyone knows that story, so I think that's worth sharing.
Yeah. So there was an osprey nest for years on the police department communications tower, which they didn't like at all because the communications tower was on their in their edge of their parking lot, and the ospreys kept dropping dead fish on the police cars. So they didn't like that with the sticks and stuff all over. So they wondered, how could we get these ospreys not to nest here anymore? And the communications tower was designed in such a way that it was very difficult to try to baffle the tower from to keep the ospreys out. It was almost impossible to do it the way the tower was constructed. But I found down south that they had been effectively eliminating ospreys from nesting areas by putting up these big bald eagle effigies right on top of the osprey nest. So I connected the police department with the group in Florida that had designed these eagles, and they bought one and they brought it up. It's a really, I should have a picture of it. It's a really nice eagle, and they put it right on top of the osprey nest about 3 weeks before the ospreys returned. The ospreys returned and yelled and screamed, circled around, and finally, obviously, abandoned that nest. And in the meantime, we found 2 other locations in Fairfield to put up an osprey platform. And so now the birds weren't banded, of course, but I assume that the ospreys that were pushed off of that eagle nest nested in one of those one of the platforms we put up. So there are ways to keep ospreys off of sensitive areas.
Yeah. I think that was Fairfield 19 was the number. I saw that from last year's that was in there.
Okay.
Didn't receive any reports on it this year, so a sign that it's still working.
Yeah.
Stratford 14, Jamie sent in these pictures. Jealous of the people who have great views of the platforms. You look right out your window or walk down your street and bang, there's Osprey right there. This was sent in by Kathy. The photo on the right was this platform right before the chicks had fledged, and her and Terry's crew, the folks who do the platform replacement, were sort of coordinating and were able to go in and replace the platform as soon as those chicks had gotten out and fledged, which a huge thank you to the crew and for everyone who's involved in that process.
Yeah, they do an amazing job.
It's incredible the number of from Terry's crew and from other groups around the state who are going out and doing that work. I think from far away, sometimes people don't realize how big the platforms are, and then you see the pictures of people putting them up, and it puts it all in perspective. So, thank you for that, and Kathy for these pictures. This picture I like a lot. Lisa had sent it in, these 2 fledglings that seem surprised that she's taking the picture.
That looks like my wife when she gets up in the morning. I hope she's not watching this.
So this is one of the ground nests that Hugh had sent in Norwalk that had these, I think it was 3 fledglings, but you see the forts that some nests are, those huge either on platforms or elsewhere that they'll build, and then you see the fledglings on a nest of that's just totally beaten apart on a rock, either from just them crash landing or the waves or the weather. But they successfully fledged, which
Wow,
is
that's great.
exciting. Yeah. This is a nest in Chaplin, which is one of the places that we did not have birds nesting in 2022. And I don't believe we've had them for a number of years, possibly since the start of the project. But it was sent in by the Fox family and they watched it and it was great. And they had some chicks fledge from there, which is exciting.
That's a
To have a new,
dangerous location.
yeah, for sure. But to have it in a new spot.
Yeah.
This was sent in as another gigantic nest. It just looks like a cinnamon
Jeez.
roll. It's like
That thing must weigh
um
a
right,
ton.
yeah. The platform is doing a lot of work holding it up. Another nest sent in Old Saybrook. Um I like this one because you can really see the fledgling eye color compared to the adult,
Oh
which of
yeah.
course is from a distance always really hard to see, but up close in a picture like this. But it does look like the picture's poking through the grass. I know some folks have really great views of nests, like we were saying, you walk down the street or you look out your window and you have a nest right there. And um, some stewards, even the platform stewards, had to work for their observations. So again, a huge appreciation and thanks to the folks who didn't have it easy this year. Um, this is a new nest. The picture quality is so bad because I took it in Wallingford. I was driving by and saw them way up there. And I pulled over and took it. They ended up fledging 3 chicks, which was really exciting. Not sure how I didn't notice this nest before, but it just was right place, right time. Um, so I was excited about that.
What's the structure that it's on?
It's on a telephone line, a huge one of the big ones that the transmission
Oh yeah.
lines. Um, you can't see the full extent of it, um, but you can see sort of the mess they've made up there. And then as soon as they fledged, whether it was, I doubt someone went up there. It was really high up, but I think the nest just ended up blowing down because a couple days after I saw them fly out, I drove by and it was empty on top. So
Hmm.
hopefully they rebuild. This Stonington nest Dorothy took, I think, from her kayak, was able to get to a nest that folks were having a hard time seeing from the road. She said, I kayak in that area, was able to get out there and do that. So, yeah, whether you drove really far or we have people on boats, kayaks, um, people are that bicycle, see them on their biking routes. So, Osprey are everywhere, and so are the stewards. So, um, Madison 2, Morgan sent this in. I think the photo on the top was before they could see the third chick, and then they went back in there and were able to find the third one. Essex 8, another giant nest. This nest was sent in by Hugh early in the season. This was in April, I think. Um, Someone was occupying it before the Osprey were there. Eventually, the great horned owl fledgling booted it, and the Osprey were able to come in. And I think they nested on this platform this year.
Hmm.
This is another nest in Wallingford that was originally on a power pole but was moved. They built this platform off to the side. Um, and the birds were successful this year. So that was exciting. Okay, so I talked a little bit in the beginning about the wildfires in Canada that we had that were late in June and into the beginning of July. And we'd put out, Tom worked on a statement and his research came up with that I mean, it's generally bad for wildlife to have that smoke in the air. Birds are especially sensitive with their respiratory systems, the way that they're built. So that was one of the thoughts. And then the other thought was that it would just reduce visibility, resulting in collisions, or maybe for osprey, uh, extended foraging times. So we sort of wanted to see. I saw in a couple observations, folks were talking about, "Oh, I had a hard time seeing my nest," but if there was anything that you observed that would be great to know. There's not a ton of research on this topic, and a lot of it on wildfire effects on birds in general. And a lot of the research that is done is out of the West, where they have seasonal fires. For New England, obviously, what we experienced was rare, and a lot of the other research that's done is simulated. They create conditions, and then you sort of see how the animal responds. So we can drop those in the chat if folks have thoughts on those. Um, yeah, I can't see the chat from here, Joyce. I don't know if you are able to, or Miley, if you can see. I
I
can't
can
see
see
it.
the chat. We have questions on some of the other slides, but no answers on thoughts on the Canadian wildfires.
Okay. Miley, is there anything that you thought you have on something like this? If not, we can jump to the next one, and then maybe some wildfire comments will come in by the end.
Yeah, I didn't get any reports of people having difficulty seeing the osprey nest, although I'm sure there were. But we all know how thick and fog-like that the smoke was for quite a while. It wasn't just for one day. It was for several days. So I imagine it had to have some kind of impact on people's visibility to osprey platforms.
So Dave Roger just put a note in the chat, and he said his two Norwalk nests didn't seem to be affected by the smoke.
Okay. Well, that's good. I think it hit at a really weird time for osprey. We either had eggs that were late in the incubation phase, which, if we don't fully understand the effect that it has on living birds that are not in eggs, so I think understanding how it affects eggs is that research is even more limited. So it hit at a weird time where we had a lot of eggs, or we had a lot of really young chicks. So the thought was, as you're developing, coming into this environment with a lot of smoke, it would be tough.
Let's see. So Dee said they were asked about if there was an impact of rising eagle populations on osprey. Brenda said that they responded when Tom put out an email asking about the impact of smoke. And Bennett said in Madison, the smoke did not seem heavy enough to affect the birds, nor did it impede their view.
Okay.
So,
I
As
can't
far as the
remember off the top.
eagles, as far as the eagles go, I'm sure eagles are having an impact on ospreys. I'm not sure if it's significant enough or not, but I know that they are having an impact. I see eagles chasing ospreys fairly regularly on the coast. So it may have an impact on their foraging ability. I don't think we've seen eagles taking ospreys off the nest here in Connecticut yet, as we have seen like in Maine. But I know that they have to be having some kind of effect, but we haven't been able to measure anything yet. Have you heard anything, Nick?
There have been a couple suspected eagle predations. I don't know that they observed that behavior, the eagle coming down onto the nest, but they have in some areas of the state. There's some I know along the Connecticut River, um, either seeing eagles early in the year. Obviously, eagles are coming in earlier than the osprey, and preventing them from nesting, or either taking over their territory, or just their eagle presence is dissuading the osprey. And then I think for the ones with suspected eagle predations, it was just an increased number of eagles being seen in the area around the time that osprey
Yeah.
chicks went missing.
Yeah,
So
and Brenda makes a good point. Great horned owls are much more impacted on ospreys, and right now anyway, than eagles are.
we did have, yeah, a handful of great horned owl incidents, either folks hearing owls in the area, or I mean, they're pretty, you can pretty much tell when the great horned owl has been the predator of something. So a lot of high suspicions in some cases. But a
Yeah,
couple of
she also mentioned about, predation from like gulls and crows. Last year, we had I know our Milford Point, nest was raided by crows, and that failed last year, but do we have any reports this year?
yeah, so there were a couple nests. One of the camera nests, I believe it was the one at Hammonasset
Yeah,
early in the season. The female was off nest while there were eggs on it for a number of hours. Folks were following in the Facebook group, and I know at least one of the eggs was predated by a gull. I don't know if the remainder were. Um, but yeah, so gulls moving in, um, and the cameras are really great too because you get that insight that you
yeah,
wouldn't otherwise
we
have.
had some raccoon predation one year at Milford as well.
There were some suspicions of red-tailed hawks influencing
Hmm.
osprey outcomes, which seemed to be primarily they would just, fly over the osprey, would chase them off, and they would get into like an aerial confrontation. Um, but none that I think were suspected predations of
Hmm.
chicks. All right, so we can, if folks on the wildfires want to throw that in the chat, if there's nothing else, I can remember the reports that did come in, and most of them were saying, I had a hard time seeing. My nest is really far away. I couldn't see the birds. I think there was a discussion either that I had with somebody or that happened on the Facebook group about potentially, increasing that foraging time. Uh, we know from the training how important osprey rely on their vision for catching fish, and I think in some areas of the state where there was really thick smoke, that could have affected their ability to hunt. Um, I don't think we got any collisions around that time. I know a lot of songbirds. I think Tom specifically talked about a group of cedar waxwings in Hartford that ended up crashing into a building around the time that we were getting a lot of smoke. So, and then, so there are some stewards who have, of course, been with the project for its whole time. And I wanted to sort of create this figure. I think we've looked at the map that's online a lot this season, and I wanted to mix up the maps that we get to look at. So I wanted to make this. Obviously, this is Connecticut. This is the nesting distribution and density for this season of birds. So you really see we have the coast, which we've always had, but the extension up all of the major rivers and into sort of all corners of the state. We're seeing osprey move, and then you can see it slowly transition to the 2014 season when the density was a lot lower, really on that eastern part, and now it'll switch back to 2023. And I think if I click one more time, we will stay on 2014. So a big change in not only the numbers of birds that are occupying a certain area, um, but also just where they are in the state. We're much further up our rivers. So I thought that that was an interesting trend to look at, and I figured
Really
since
cool.
we're we're 10 years in at this point, it's a good milestone to look at. So I'm sure folks who have been on the ground for a couple of years or since the project started can speak to that change in the number of osprey. Also, this is the number of active nests. Sorry, I didn't say in the beginning. That's what this is looking at. So not even all of our nests, just the active ones. And then, oh, we're going to transition one more time back to 2023. Okay, so the big thank you. We started with it in the beginning. I just wanted to say it again. We really appreciate everything that everybody has done. Um, so many of you, like I said, 5,500 reports is an incredible number to have gotten in just a couple of months. And also, so many folks went, beyond that call of just the stewardship. They're really in it for the osprey, which is great, and it's great to see so many folks that have adopted that mindset and have taken, sort of the role of stewardship into their own hands and go on above and beyond. So a lot of work has been done this year by a lot of passionate people for fishing line, just going out and picking it up, which is great to see. And of course, outreach, signage, and the monofilament disposal bins. There's been a lot of work by some really dedicated folks, which we want to appreciate. Of course, our rehabbers who are intaking all of our injured osprey. A huge thank you to them and to the folks that report that information. And then the platforms, like we were talking about before, it's a big undertaking. So to that group of people,
Yeah.
a huge thank you for providing the opportunity to have these birds nest in a safe location.
So, Nick, we do have a couple of questions that we skipped over earlier, so we just want to make sure that we address those.
Of course.
First, we are recording this, and so Nick will be sending it out to everybody. So we'll be available so everybody can see the data. Of course, he's going to send the reports out to everybody too, so you'll be able to really kind of look at the data and understand the impact you have. Dave Roger asked for the fishing, for the data that on your slide about the fish, the predation. Is that only during daylight hours?
Correct. That a lot of the other studies, you guys can still see it, right? This screen. I just want to pop back up to where he's at. A lot of the studies are just focusing on 12-hour intervals, and they'll sample for a block of time in that. Since we don't have on the reporting form an area to put your start time, we weren't able to sort of randomize the data by time of day. But ideally, you would get observations from the morning, the afternoon, and the evening, because I think we know that foraging, the delivery rate is going to change as the day goes on. But yeah, this is focusing on prey deliveries during hours that people would have been observing, which generally is
And the birds are totally diurnal anyway.
right.
Right.
So this is covering most of it.
Lori Shaw, all the effort that Lori and Terry put in. She liked the idea that you split the categories of the vacant versus abandoned to be a little bit clearer about whether these are used nests or truly abandoned nests.
Okay. So in 2022, abandoned meant a platform or just a nest in general that either existed but didn't have bird presence and was a platform. It could have existed in a tree but didn't have bird presence, or it could have existed, had bird presence, and then the birds left. So what we're really trying to do is distinguish between, okay, did this nest ever have a bird, or has it always just been a platform that the birds haven't used?
So Lori thinks that's a great idea.
Oh, okay. I thought she was asking for a clarification on it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no. She thinks it's a great idea to clarify whether it's a truly abandoned nest or whether it's a nest that no birds occupied at all in the year.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, it was mostly in response to stuff that folks had sent in. There were some people just in the beginning of the season, a lot of, this platform's never been used. It's never been used. It's been here. It's never been used for whatever reason. We don't know. So I thought that splitting that information would help us. So
a little bit
thank
more
you guys.
clarification. Yeah. Tammy asked, how many eggs are usually per nest? What's a norm?
A lot of, I believe it's 3 to 5. We did not have this year any nest fledge 4 chicks. We had a couple with 4 chicks growing, but we weren't ever to confirm fledge, but a lot of them fledged 3. So Miley, I believe it's 3 to 5 is the average.
Yeah. It varies a lot, but I think the average is 3 to 5, right?
Okay. So Miley, Brenda asked if you got her email about the buoy she sponsored for Osprey Nation and Osprey Stewardship.
Remind me what that was again, Brenda? You can take her off mute.
I'm giving you the right to unmute, Brenda.
There you go.
I sent you an email late last week. So the Stonington lobster trap tree, I was very disappointed that I had never seen an osprey on the tree. So I sponsored a buoy.
Oh, yes, that's the one. Of course. I thought that was a great thing.
Yeah.
Does everybody know about that lobster pot tree? It's a display of lobster pots in town. And
Yeah.
it's got all different
I have a picture.
artists' work on it.
Yeah.
And Brenda, you organized the Osprey buoy, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, I did you proud. I told her the whole history of Connecticut Osprey and my purpose and my passion. And I told her I wrote it all up about Osprey Nation. I gave them stats and, I said I wanted an osprey on the tree, but I really wanted to honor the program and the citizen volunteers.
Yeah.
So it says Osprey stewardship on the tree. So on the buoy. So I hope people will go to the tree and find the buoy and take a picture.
I'm sure a lot of people who drive by there all the time will now know something about ospreys they didn't know before and maybe want to get involved. So
right. And it's supposed to say Osprey Nation on the bottom. So who knows? Maybe we'll get more volunteers.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that, Brenda. That was a great thing. I got a good chuckle out of that. What a great idea.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome, Brenda. Thank you.
Yeah, I was very pleased to do it. It was like, what? No osprey on a stunning tree?
Right. So. Absolutely. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Brenda also said that she was very happy that when she did our Master Naturalist program, what is that, 3 years ago, she there in Goodwin Forest, there were no ospreys, but they're there now in Chaplin. So she's very excited about that.
Yeah.
Lori, Nick thanked you for everything that you've done. You were great to work with.
Yeah, you know how they say they wanted a chicken in every pot. My goal is to have an osprey nest in everybody's backyard. Yeah, I like to thank Nick again too. I mean, it's just a fantastic job. I'm hoping he'll come back next year.
So Donna,
he knows I'm putting the pressure on him.
It's so far away, but I definitely it was such a special experience. I'm absolutely going to be considering it. Working with all you guys, like we've been saying, it was just great. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks from all of us to you. That's for sure.
Definitely. So Donna said she sees signage that says no trespassing in a marsh site, and she's wondering about number 1 in Stratford on the mouth of the river and the channel marker.
Yeah, that's become an issue this year. There's an osprey nesting on a channel marker, which it's not a buoy, but it's a structure, and it's accessible at low tide. On a really low tide, you can walk there. But fishermen often pull their boats right up on the marker and fish there, disturbing the ospreys whenever they're there. And we were trying to figure out some way to prevent that from happening. So there's a sign there, but I think fishermen are ignoring the sign. They're basically saying, hey, we can go anywhere we want to, below the high tide mark, but trying to get DEP to enforce it. Number one, it's out in the water, and it's difficult. So we're still working on it, but that has been an issue with this one particular nest. It's on this structure that is surrounded by fishermen at least a couple, 3 times a week, right when the ospreys are incubating or feeding young. It's a problem.
She also added, great reporting, Nick, and great photos by all. Terry said that Lori gave some information from Terry saying 2 to 3 eggs is normal, 4 is high, never 5.
Great.
Allison asked, will juveniles return to the area where they fledged? And if a nest is not available, what do they do?
Well, that's a situation where, you know, they try to get any available occupiable type areas, you know, sometimes in trees, sometimes on rocks like Nick showed. But that is also can be limiting the population as well. If there's no places for them to nest, then they're not going to be nesting, obviously. So
I'll just add, I think they do have a pretty high natal fidelity, so they'll come back to that area sort of where they hatch from. There are a lot of reports this year of nests that started. Folks suspected that the birds weren't necessarily serious about building the nest and speculated that maybe those were young birds coming back and sort of trialing out a territory or trialing out a nest site for that first time. Because I imagine not always do you come back after maturing on the wintering grounds and just have a successful nest that first year. So
Right. I mean, I usually tell stories of like the first year they're challenged to be successful.
yeah, apparently, you know, the young ospreys, when they leave the nest, they head to their wintering grounds, largely in Brazil, but they don't come back the first year. They apparently they stay on their wintering grounds until they mature. Then they come back as mature birds. And apparently, the first nesting attempt is more of a sort of a housekeeping thing. You know, they'll build a nest, they'll hang out at the nest, but they won't actually lay eggs the first year. And they'll come back the next year and get serious about producing some young.
So Gloria said her nest had no activity in the 5 years that she lived at that location, but this year they had fledglings. She wants to know what defines abandoned.
So for abandoned, we're looking at just the single year of data. So if the birds show up, you see them on a platform or you see them on, so for abandoned any nest, it doesn't have to be a platform, but we're never able to confirm definitive breeding attempts. So you might see the birds on the nest, you might see them building the nest, but unless we start to see a bird in incubation, which then becomes an active nest, if they don't ever go into incubation, then that's what we're considering to be it gets classified as an abandoned nest. But it sounds like if yours had fledglings this year, historically it may have been abandoned, and if it's a platform, it probably could have gone under the vacant platform if we'd had it back then. But if they were successful this year, then it's
and
successful.
interesting about new platforms, you need a permit from Long Island Sound, the Office of Long Island Sound, to put any platform in a tidal area. And I think DEP is pretty much looking at the ospreys as fully recovered. So they're not really granting permits to put new platforms on salt marshes. And the reason is because if you put a platform on a salt marsh that then gets occupied by ospreys, it limits the potential recreation ability of people on that salt marsh. So, you know, if it's at the edge of a creek, people can't get too close to the osprey nest for fishing or for boating or canoeing or kayaking. So DEP, I think, is looking at limiting the number of new osprey platforms on salt marshes because it reduces the recreation ability of that salt marsh. So I haven't heard, maybe Terry has more information on this, but I haven't heard of them granting any new osprey platforms on salt marshes, because certainly there are lots of places where we could put up, or someone could put up new osprey platforms that would, you know, sort of take the heat off of these birds that aren't finding nesting areas. So, but that's the position of DEP, that the ospreys have recovered. We don't want to put any more platforms up on salt marshes because it reduces the recreation ability of the public.
So Beverly said it was great to see such a variety of osprey nest locations. Bennett said East River Marsh has many unhoused osprey every season. They often see attempts to take over platform nests, but so far all have failed. And Brenda, thank you for clarifying this. She said males are tracked and said to return within 15 miles of the natal nest, and females maybe 50 miles, and that's per Dr. Beauregard. And that is it for our questions and comments tonight.
All right, so thank you, Joyce, for helping out and giving us all the encouragement and backup we needed. Thanks to Nick, thanks to Tom, and most of all, thanks to all you stewards who really make this program the fantastic program that it is. And we're hoping to keep it going for another 10 years or more.
Sure.
Let me know how you make out. No.
Onward to another successful year in 2024.
Yep. Okay. Thank you all very much. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.